Welcome fishing fans to another edition of Randy and Steve's Outdoor Adventures. This is podcast number 2, Introduction to Ice Fishing. We're going to take you guys through the basics, basic setups, rules, equipment, tips, strategies, all the stuff we do. For those of you who might just be getting into it for the first time, or if you're just dabbling in it and you might be able to learn one thing or two here. We'll see what we can do here.
Kind of like a how-to guide.
Yeah.
You know, best overall intro how-to guide.
Yep. So first things first, when you go out and you get out there on the ice, you got to make a hole. So Steve's going to take us through the different sizes and types of augers.
All right. So generally, there's 3 different types of augers you can get, with one of the types having 2 different genres, I would call them. You know, you basically have motorized, you have gas motorized, you have electric motorized, and you have hand. You know, now a lot of guys that are around here, you basically see the gas or you see the hand. And the reason is just basically because we have ice for maybe 2-3 months. Tops. Sometimes it's almost like 2-3 weeks. You know, that we had fishable ice.
Last year.
Yeah, last year. One time out in the ice.
Locally, yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of times you see guys with gas or hand because it's just not worth spending $500 or more on the electric. Now, the electric are really nice. They get a lot of holes on a charge. They're environmentally friendly, but it's just not worth the money. As far as the way we work and what we make, you know, I'm a teacher, so I don't make much money, and just $500 is a lot for something I'm not going to use for very many times throughout the year.
Yeah, if you live further north and you're going to get more use out of it, then it's a little different.
Oh, yeah. Now, there is an alternative. If you have a really nice drill that you can get at a reasonable price, a hand drill, you can get attachments to the drill that will go into an auger, and you can get a really nice electric drill that can do 8-inch holes.
Yep.
You know, and
a lot of them are 6, but they make them. You can get them in 8.
Yeah, so they're very, you know, something that's really nice to have with that. But you know, we don't have the drills, you know, so it doesn't really make much sense. We tried it before. Our batteries ran low, like after one hole, because of it's an older drill, older battery. The cold zap. That there's some complications with that. So you know, we just stuck with basically the hand. That's what we currently have. We have a 4-inch and we have an 8-inch. The 4-inch was actually, we found on 120.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, there was no one around. It was just laying around, like in the parking lot. You know, we posted stuff on Facebook. No one claimed it, so you know, basically we still have it. It was really nice 4-inch hole. The 4-inch holes are really nice for, you know, if you're going for panfish like bluegills, because you can bounce around from hole to hole. Not a lot of
drill them
quick, and that thing cuts quick. It cuts really fast like butter, even with big, thick ice. Now the 6-inch is kind of the best of both worlds. Small enough that you have.
The cat's going crazy.
Oh my god!
8-inch holes.
So yes, 8-inch holes.
Oh my god, the cat.
So 8-inch holes. That's what we have. So they're basically, you know, really nice for larger fish, pike, walleye, any of the bigger stuff that you can do with hand. You can't do it 10-inch holes with hand. It's impossible. It's just too much. 8-inch holes are nice, but they wear you down quick. And if you have thick ice, if you have thick ice, it's tough. 6 inches, again, both the best of both worlds. You can, they're big enough they're not going to freeze over very quickly, but small enough that you're not going to be really busting, you know, your butt after trying to get through that ice.
Yeah, if you're dealing with panfish or small to medium-sized bass, a 6-inch diameter hole is okay.
Yeah. So, you know, when we talk about ice thickness too, hand has limitations, so about 8 to 10 inches. 8 to 10 inches, after that, it really gets to wear on you. You just look at the ice and you're like, you don't want to do it. You know, you just like, man, we're not doing well, but I do not want to drill another hole. So
after you drill 20, 30 holes, yeah, you're about done.
Yeah. So the gas auger is really where it's at. If you can spare the $300 to buy them, the alternative. Believe it or not, a lot of people sell gas augers on Facebook groups.
If you get one used, you can do okay.
Craigslist, Facebook groups, use stuff like that. Even like yard sales and stuff. Sometimes people, if there's old fishermen or stuff like that, will sell them. Keith's working on one right now. It works really well.
Is that an 8-inch?
No, it's a 10.
A 10-inch cut.
It's a Jiffy. It was a Jiffy White Lightning, so it's one of the faster ones from a few years ago. But there's some things that needs to be replaced on it. But for the most, it runs, it cuts, it does what it needs to do. But you could, if you're good with your hands like Keith is, you can save a lot of money with that. So that's another alternative for a guy who wants to get started. The bonus of hand augers is they're a lot cheaper.
And they're a lot lighter if you're going a long way.
Yes.
We hike into this one lake up in the Pocono Mountains where it's like 3 miles in plus each way.
Yeah, that's our oldest ice fishing video, guys, if you want to check that out. We hiked in 2 miles in.
Well, we cut across Egypt Meadow, shortened it up a little bit. But that is actually in a natural area. So there are some places here in PA where if there's a natural area, you cannot use a gas or a propane-powered auger. You'd have to use an electric one or a hand one.
Yep. So, there is that. If you're up in Canada where you have ice thickness that's like 2 foot, you might even have to get like extensions to your auger.
They make extensions for the augers.
Where you have to get like an auger that's 3 feet long. Or not 3 foot long, but like
3 foot shaft.
3 foot shaft, and have like 2 or 3 shafts through. I mean, they just cut through the next one, attach the next one, attach the next one. Next thing you know, you got a 9 foot shaft. Something along those crazy lines. But yeah, I mean, they do have those. So if you're up that far north and with that kind of thick ice, then you shouldn't be getting a hand auger.
Yeah, you might want to go with the fuel.
Go with the fuel
powered one of some sort.
So, once you break through that hole, then you got to ask yourself, well, what's next?
Well, in PA, the law states that per licensed individual, you can use up to 5 devices at one time. So typically what we do while we're first setting up in the morning and we just start drilling our holes, we drop tip-ups into the holes. It's basically 2 wooden sticks with a basic reel. Down below it, your line comes off the reel. When you get a bite, the flag goes up, and you essentially hand line your fish in. So typically, what we do is we drop those tip ups in first thing in the morning when we're setting up. So that way, we're fishing right off the get go. And like I said, in PA, you're allowed 5 lines in the water per person for ice fishing. So if there's 2 of us or 3 of us, we have anywhere from 10 to 15 lines in at one time. Once we get all of our holes drilled, however many we're doing for the day, we may remove 1 or 2 of the tip-ups and go to jigging. It just depends on the day.
Yeah. It depends on what's hitting, too.
It depends on what we're fishing for also.
Yeah. When we go up to the Poconos, we're generally fishing with 5 tip-ups because our jigging rods just don't usually get bit a lot up there. Not sure why. Maybe it's what we do, what we use.
Yeah, we haven't figured out the right jig yet,
but occasionally we'll get some big bluegills at Shahola. But at the other lakes we fish, we just not much luck on the jig. So it's one of those things with with the shiners they're usually getting action, and you just be patient, and eventually it's going to happen. But when we talk about the tip ups too, you can hear that there's bells. The bells are real nice for low light conditions.
They don't come like that.
Right.
That's an accessory you put on it after the fact. It's really nice. That way, if you're in a shelter, or like you said, first thing in the morning, late in the evening, or at night, you have the audible when you can't see the flag go up. So it's a really nice addition to that. Because
occasionally on a line, Keith and I came across this right at dusk for an hour or 2. Where you can't see the big crappies come out the hit. We've had crappies come up and that plugged up an 8-inch hole like a dinner plate.
Slabs.
We're talking 15, 16 inch or possibly even bigger, up to, I think the one year we heard a 4-pounder caught, and it was confirmed.
They catch them over 18 every year.
Yeah, Woody's Sporting Goods out in Wernersville, I think that's what. Yeah.
Yep.
Confirmed weight of a crappie at Olani that was 4 pounds. So.
Toad.
Yeah. So that's why the bells are on there. Plus, it helps distinguish from people if you're in a crowd. Helps distinguish tip-ups when they're all the same.
That too. Sometimes we go out there on a Saturday during like the middle of the season, when there's been ice for a couple weeks, like early February usually is for us, and then sometimes on a Saturday you'll have 100 plus guys in one cove.
Yeah, but the bells, all the bells are really is just the typical bells for a catfish or something that you can get.
You can attach them to rod tips.
You can attach the rod tips. Well, I have attached to the flag. It works really well. Kind of the other trick you do with the tip ups as well is, I don't know if you guys can see it from here, but the button trick. That's basically to help you with your depth, so that you're always sitting at the same depth. You use the little weight. A little weight. It could be a bank sinker. It could be a clip-on weight for ice fishing. You let it get down there. You feel it hit bottom. You move the button to the tip of the water, and then you move it up about a foot, so that way your bait is always a foot off the bottom, where most bass are, or fish are this time of year. Close to the bottom where the warmth is at. So. That you're always like right there. You're not in the fishes. The minnow's not sitting there on the bottom doing nothing, because minnows will do that if you let them.
They run for cover for sure. You want to, usually for us, at least if you're over on a lawn, you want to be near the grass, but you can't be in it too thick. Live bait, it likes to hide. Obviously, they don't want to get eaten. But if you're in that grass and but not buried in it, that's usually where you want to be.
Yeah. So that's tip ups. Now there's a couple of different versions. We got the ones that are like sticks. You can see with the T that are basically an X, like Randy showed. There's some that are basically has a cover on top that are really nice. They're a little bit more expensive.
Some are circular.
Right, yeah. They're circular, and they keep the holes. They're insulated, so they keep the holes from freezing up. These ones here, the holes will freeze up in extreme weather. So something you might want to get, as you guys fish more. And if you go that route, is just these little covers here. They're like $5.
So like an inch thick foam, and they insulate that hole just a little bit. If you get out there on those days where it's like in the teens,
or windy,
or really windy days where the wind chill really drops, it'll help keep the holes open for you.
Because if you don't want to be out there scooping up repeatedly over and over and over again and have your ice freeze over. Those really help on windy days and really cold days. They help insulate that up, so you don't have to worry about constantly scooping out your holes.
On a cold day, if you have enough line out, or enough lines out, enough people, it can be like a job between constantly keeping ice out of the holes, constantly rebaiting, catching fish. It gets to be like constant on good days.
So anything that can kind of save you from extra work is going to be worth your time.
You pick things up as you go.
Yeah. So we talk about tip up. So another device that we like to use, because we both prefer to fish, fight fish on a rod more so than by hand. Kind of puts it more, I guess, on a more even playing ground with.
Yeah, hand lining them's okay. I open water fished for 20 plus years before I started to ice fish. I still just like fighting them on a rod and reel. So there are also different rigging outfits that you can use for rod and reel too. The one that I use is from HT. It's called an ice tender. Basically, it's a wood plank, like a 2x4. Basically, it has like a little piece of PVC pipe in it. Essentially, it holds your rod, and your line goes in the water with the bail open. And then when you get a fish, it trips. And it has a flag on it like a tip up, so the flag will raise, and then the fish is just taking line with the bail open. Flag alerts you that you have a fish. You walk over, shut the bail, reel it up tight, set the hook, and then you get to bring your fish in on a rod and reel. So I have, I think, 3 of those ice tenders. So once we get all of our tip ups in, I'll walk back around and drop rods in with these ice riggers into my holes, and then I'll have like 1 tip up and then a jigging rod in my hand as my 5th one, or if I'm not have a jigging rod in my hand, I can just drop 2 tip-ups in. But you have those HT ice tenders, and then Keith has another brand of rod tender that's called a jaw jacker. And basically what that one does is, rather than running your line with the bail open, you use an inline reel, and you have it on free spool, and that it bends the rod down to the water, so the rod's always bent when there's no fish. And then when a fish bites, it breaks loose of the release, and then the rod tip will go straight up in the air as you're alert that there's a fish there. And the spool is on free spool, so the fish can take line without yanking your rod in the water. You walk over, and as soon as you start to reel that inline reel, it'll engage, and then again you can fight the fish on rod and reel.
Yeah, so the jaw jackers, they're really nice for fish that take the whole bait. You know, if it's something like a pickerel or a pike where they kind of grab it, you know, and then readjust in their mouth and then swallow it, that's difficult because it sets the hook right off the bat. As soon as it starts moving, it takes off, and the hook's set. So if the fish does not have the hook in its mouth, it's not something that's going to be very effective, right? But you know, stuff like largemouth, which generally inhale the bait. If you're talking steelhead or browns, when you're talking smaller baits like egg sacks and stuff like that, they're good for that as well. I think Eric Hatya.
Yeah, Eric
Hatya. I can't. Yeah, it's hard to pronounce his name for me, but he either uses jaw jackers or he uses something similar.
They're
to jaw
very
jackers.
similar to the jaw jacker. I don't know if they're that brand or not.
Yeah, they basically set the hook when the fish takes it and starts running with it. But you know, the simple one that we use is just the HT tender tip up. It's where you have to set the hook. Very more like you're actually fishing rod and reel than the jaw jacker, but the jaw jacker is kind of cool the way it works. So let's talk about, you know, we just talked about how we use the rods on the rod tenders and the jaw jackers. Let's talk about how we use them for jigs, right? Because that would be the next step then, right?
I agree.
So, you know, again, we can use 5 devices. So generally, if we're getting good rod action out there, like on a Lonnie, we'll have 4 tip ups out, or 4 tenders, or whatever combination of devices out there.
4 live baits.
4 live baits, and we'll have 1 jigging rod. So
Jigging rods or ice fishing rods in general, I should say, they're a lot shorter than your typical open water rods. A lot of open water rods, if you're fishing for, you know, bass and whatever species of fish that are even bigger than bass, typically you're using 6, 7 foot rods or more. You can use smaller rods for trout, you know, 4.5, 5 footers, but your ice fishing rods are small. They start, like the lightest ice fishing rod that I've seen, typically you see a 24-inch ultralight, and then they go up from there. The longest that I see is about 40 inches if you're fishing for really big fish, 42 inches some guys use, you know, for Lakers, or northern pike, or big walleyes, but typically what we're using is in that 24 to 34 inch range. If we're using a live bait on the rod tender, like for bass or for pickerel, small northern pike, like in our local lakes here in PA, typically for that you want like a 30 inch, give or take 28, 30, 32 inch in like a medium to medium heavy. We have, you know, different sizes and different actions of rods depending on what lake we're on and the size of the fish in it, you know, what we're targeting. But typically, if you're running a shiner, kind of for whatever bites, you know, bass, crappies, smaller pickerel, and smaller pike, nothing real big. That 30-inch, give or take, medium to medium heavy is about what you want.
yeah. So yeah, we personally, for the tenders and stuff, we'll use generally ugly sticks because they're cheap. They do the job.
What is that there?
I think it's just like a 30
That
or
is
2 footer.
a 30-inch medium heavy. It's rated for 6 to 10 pound line.
Yeah. So that does the job for the most part. You know, you don't need anything special. You know, and we're going to talk about price point at the end here as far as what it's going to get, what you're going to need to spend in order to get everything so you can just go out ice fishing. And then, the key thing there is just getting the minimum and then going from there. But
if I may interject right there, there's always cost to get started in anything. So my strategy with this was to get started, get 5 lines in the water for as cheap as possible.
Right.
You can buy cheap tip-ups that are in the $7 to $10 range each. So between your 4 tip-ups and a rod, you can be in equipment-wise for about $100.
Yeah.
On the low end, just to get started.
So, I mean, those dog bones, they work just as well as the regular, as the tip-ups I have.
Keith likes talking smack on them, but then he reels in big largemouth on them.
Yeah, so the drawback is, if you're up north where you have a lot more snow, the dog bones are not going to cut it because they're not going to be above the snow.
Shaft of the flags are really short. They're really small and compact.
But around here, they're fine. We don't get...
Most of the time.
Most of the time. A lot of our snow blows off our lakes. A lot of our lakes are more protected. So you have to dig down into the ice in order to get to the surface.
Not usually.
Yeah.
Where we are.
Yeah. So
again, southeast Pennsylvania.
Yeah. So, but the taller sticks, if you're getting more snow, are definitely better. So they're going to be a little bit more expensive, but they're not. These ones here, like 10 to 15, they're not expensive. They're nice ones for the money. But as far as jig rods, I
think those hard water magnums, I think they're $20. Those tip-ups.
Yeah, they might have went up in price from when I bought them.
Yeah, I think last week when we were there, I saw them. They were $20.
But I have 2 jigging rods. The reason is because I like having one for crappies and perch, and I like one having for bluegills. Because we do a lot of bluegill over on Alani, and they're small. So I really like going ultra light with it to make it fun, and then 2-pound test. I'm a little nuts with that, but
2 pound, you haven't had a problem yet. And if anything, you probably get more bites than I do.
Right.
I also use an ultralight jigging for bluegills. Real light jigs, you're talking 64th, 32nd ounce jigs. I use a 24-inch ultralight for that. Yeah,
and then and then the crappy rod I generally use medium light with like either 4 or 6 pound, whatever I feel like. Fluorocarbon or specifically ice line, like micro ice, monofilament, something along those lines. Because as long as it's relatively invisible or not noticeable, translucent, the fish don't really matter over there. It doesn't really bother them too much. Now, we talk about jigs. We're not too fancy with our jigs. We're not using the...
We're just scratching the surface as far as the artificial game goes here with this ice fishing.
Yeah, we don't really use a lot of crazy different stuff. I know guys use Swedish pimples and stuff like that. Guys really get it. Yeah, really get into the jigging part of it. And I can see the fun to that. But we dabble in a little bit, but we don't really get too much action from the lures. So we generally just get little jigs and we tip them with either a butterworm, a wax worm, worms, occasionally a minnow. We kind of do it that way. But I will say about this with those types of jig heads is there's definitely days when color is very, very important.
Absolutely, just like open water fishing, they'll prefer one color over another on any given day. It just depends. You got to play around, experiment.
Yeah, and some days they like bare jigs, and other days they like jigs that have a little blade on them.
Yep.
Some days they don't want to jig at all. I mean, there was a time when we were going for a panfish, and we had both jigs on. Both you and me had jigs on, and Keith just had a bare hook, like a bare Aberdeen hook, and he was annihilating them.
Mm-hmm.
So they were obviously starting to seem to pick up on the jigs being there. So, and I think that was one of our longer ice seasons that they were picking up that.
Yeah, they had been pressured more and.
Right.
They got really finicky.
And the Aberdeen hooks are nice because they're long and small.
Light
so
wire.
You can really feed that bait on there. And it's something, just a little extra trick to keep in your book is use those Aberdeen hooks on the bottom because, with what we do, again, I don't know if you guys can see, but when we do these, we have a top-bottom rig. We have one 8 to 10 inches above and then a different one at the bottom. kind of hedge your bet on, you can use a minnow on the bottom or on the top. The nice part about having the minnow is that you don't really have to jig for it. It does it yourself. It swims around, so it moves the bait for you. You know, and sometimes the minnow's not the deal, so then you go to the regular jigging type. But, you know, it gives you a little bit of variability to see what they like. You know, if they
play with different colors too.
Exactly.
If you continuously get bit on the top one, it could be the color, it could be the depth. But with two different ones on there, we find that we can get zoned in on the depth and the color faster.
You know, and with bluegills not being the biggest fish in the world, if you're jigging for them, it's nice because you can catch two at a time.
Sometimes you double up.
You know, sometimes it's double up, and it's kind of fun when you double up. You pull two bluegills out at once. It's kind of a fun thing. You know, as far as colors that we use, I personally like using, you know, a white, blue-white chartreuse. Yellow, like a green chartreuse or yellow chartreuse, either one, an orange, and sometimes occasionally pink is fun too.
Sometimes,
you know,
depends on the day.
Yeah, those hot colors. It depends on how aggressive they are. One color that we've been really doing well on the past couple of years has been blue, and you know, you look at it as a fish attractor, it's like blue. Why blue?
I don't know if it's the color of the water or what. But
yeah,
it seems like at our local lakes here, especially on Alani where we go more often than not, there's something to that blue. It may not be the best color on any given day, but it seems to be like a solid place to start.
Yeah, and I think with blue, the reason why I think blue is I'm leaning towards is a lot of our bait in the area, our bait fish, tend to have a blue or dark back.
A hue to them.
Yeah, they don't. We have a lot of alewives and stuff like that in our area. So they have that blue back to them, especially in the winter, when I think it's more prevalent. And they, you know, so I think, you know, as far as for crappies and stuff that are feeding on actual bait, I think the blue might be better with that than the other colors. Plus guys probably use it too, you know, because they go with the more obvious colors.
Chartreuse is tried true, and the, you know, orange and yellow, you see a lot of guys using Fire Tiger, stuff like that.
So, you know, I mean, like, I don't really have much to add else as far as jigs. Do you have anything?
No, that's pretty much it. The only lure that I did experiment with a little bit last year was a Rapala jigging wrap. They make different sizes. It's got a hook on either end. The line ties on the top, and it's a horizontal minnow type bait. I think the one I have is like 2.5 inches long. I did catch a crappie on that last year, jigging with it, and I had some other hits where I didn't get the fish hooked. But other than that, we're just starting to dabble in that area.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting too because we fish up in north, a lot of pickerel lakes up there.
Up in the Poconos, a lot of those lakes is just loaded with pickerel.
And surprisingly, with how hyper aggressive I've seen pickerel, they don't really hit the lures.
Not for me. I must not be working it right. We're gonna keep continuing to experiment, but typically, yeah, we'd have a hot hold where we've maybe had 3 or 4 shiners taken out of it over the course of the day, and then we tried dropping the spoons or the jigging wraps down. So far, we haven't had any success. But yeah, I thought that they would just climb right all over.
Yeah,
but maybe I'm not working it right. I don't know.
You know, pickerel, I mean, I've seen them almost come out of the frickin' hole after minnows. So
we'll have to keep playing.
Yeah, I've seen them hit the camera even.
Yeah,
come up and bite the camera.
Run into that. Yeah.
But for some reason they just don't want to.
Yeah, we have to just keep.
Yeah.
We haven't figured it out yet. No. That's all. We'll report back once we figure it out.
So you know, we talked about the rods, the jigs, the tip ups, you know, the auger. So let's just talk about odds and ends. Stuff to make your day a little bit easier. Now this stuff, you know, is not necessarily, you know, necessary. Some of it is, but this is all stuff that's kind of, you know, additional that you guys will probably, you know, as you go through, you're going to like. You know, I mean, number one thing, I think this is something you definitely need if you're, you know, if you're going to be fishing with tip-ups, you need it. Insulated buckets.
Yeah, we went up to the Poconos one time when we were driving up. It was like right around 0 degrees until we got there. Our bait was frozen. Yeah. So we learned a hard lesson that day. Don't use a straight plastic bait bucket if you're going to be in extreme cold weather. If it's only 30 to 40 degrees, you're okay with it. But if not, you want to get one that has a layer of foam in there.
And not only that too, if it's riding in the back of the truck, it's got to be insulated.
Better off, yeah, for sure.
If it's not insulated and you get in the truck, you might be okay. And if you're using that stuff, if it's not, like I said, super cold day and it's riding in the front of the truck, you're fine. But if it's riding tailgate in the back for a while, it's definitely got to be insulated. Another thing is scoops too. When keeping your hands dry, you want to have some sort of scoop for the hole.
Keeping it clear of ice, you'll have ice chips that form in the hole. After you drill it, depending on how cold it is, it'll happen sooner the colder it is. But every so often you have to take that scoop in there and scoop that stuff out to keep your hole from freezing.
And there's some that are nice that have like a little layer, a little length meter on it too, so that we can kind of get an idea of what the bottom of how thick the ice is.
Measure the ice thickness.
Especially if you're prospecting.
You want to have at least 3 to 4 inches is what's considered safe for an adult person to walk on. 5 to 6 inches will hold a smaller four-wheeler or smaller snowmobile. We prefer at least 5 inches, especially if you get multiple guys out there drilling holes and whatnot, just for safety. Better safe than sorry. When you get up into the 8 to 10 inches of ice thickness, now you're talking about it can hold a small car. 10 to 12 inches of thickness, hold a small light-duty pickup truck.
When you're doing this stuff, make sure you're safe. The bottom line.
It's better to not go alone. If the ice is thick, then hey, it is what it is.
And we always talk about every year, Ohlone, the lake where we fish a lot.
Every year, guys go through.
Recently there's a guy there was 3 guys out there. They saw him, and then next thing you know, they didn't see him, and he didn't make it home. So be safe out there. There's ways of doing it. Make sure you're getting screwdrivers or something to get yourself out.
Spud bar. Early ice, late ice. Check the thickness as you go every so often.
If it's super thin, make sure you have a life vest, or there's actually environmental suits that inflate now they have for ice fishing. They're expensive, but it's something. It's there. But the next thing is talk about something that's making your day easier, and you're not getting your hands wet. Little minnow scoop.
Another scoop for in the minnow bucket. So you're not reaching in the water to get your shiners out or your fathead minnows, whatever you're using.
When we're talking about also additional stuff, a seat. If you're going to be out there for a while, you're going to want to be able to sit down.
Just a little folding bag chair is good. We prefer to between your 5 devices, your tackle, small tackle box or 2 for your hooks, sinkers, or if you get into it further than that and you get all kinds of jigs and stuff like that. Chair, if you stay all day, a lunch, drink, something like that. It gets to be, a little bit too much to carry. There are different backpacks and devices out there that you can buy. In our experience, though, the most friendly thing for us to get all of our stuff out there has been a sled. You can put your bait bucket in there, your chair, rods, all of our tip-ups, all of our tackle boxes, and just pull it right behind you. Obviously, it's best when there's snow or ice to pull it on, but even if there's not, that flat bottom of the ones that we have, the company is called Jet Sled. They're really, really flat, and even if there's no snow or ice, you can still pull all your stuff along, even on the grass.
The sleds are a huge benefit, and there's backpacks out there and stuff like that,
different carts, nice. Wagons, there's all kinds of stuff.
A lot of guys have, the wagons are nice when there's no snow, but they get heavy too, but again, the sled is the most versatile that we've seen.
I would agree. The sled, if you're going to get one thing, the sled's the way to go. Now,
what you can do as far as a seat too, along with the chair is, you can use some of the insulated buckets as seats. So that does save some spots in your sled. So that's an option. The guys who are handy, I've seen guys who've actually put a seat in their sled. Have installed a seat in their sled so that they did, that's another part of their seat.
It's like built in and they flip it up.
Yeah, there's some sleds that are actual seats too. We've seen those at a convert.
Yep.
But again, those are a little bit more expensive sleds.
Yeah, I think our jet sleds are like what, $50, $60
something
for
like
a big
that.
one.
Yeah, something
different
like that.
sizes,
So I'm just trying to think. Anything else you can?
Rods, tip ups, augers to make holes. Mainly live baiting using a wide gap hook or a kale style hook. Real simple, just a split shot about a foot above it, a small split shot just to keep the bait down. You have everything from fathead minnows to medium shiners, large shiners, all the way up to pike shiners, and you can even use bluegills for live bait if you're on big enough fish. Typically, here in Pennsylvania where we're at, we find that with the tip-ups, believe it or not, big fish and small fish, we have our best luck most consistently, I'd say, is on large shiners. Large shiner, you're talking about approximately 4 inches, I'd say, maybe 4.5.
Yep.
Even the smaller fish, like the larger crappies and the good sized perch, I think in the wintertime, at least in our experience, they prefer that larger profile bait. Not saying that we don't catch fish on the medium shiners and on the smaller fathead minnows, but it seems like the fish typically, they want that larger bait. Like in the wintertime, if they're going to expend the energy to eat that bait, they prefer a bigger bait.
Yeah, they want to feel full. They don't want to go expend the energy for a little morsel. They want to.
Yeah, it seems that way anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, sometimes we do catch them on the little fatheads and on the smaller shiners, but we always try and get a little bit of a mix. But for the most part, on our tip ups, on our rod tenders, whatever we're fishing live bait on. Whether or not we have a jigging rod in our hand separately or not, typically we're using the large shiners.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because everyone goes out there and uses small bait for crappie. The biggest crappie I've ever seen on our lines, which unfortunately I still talk about it all the time when we talk about ice fishing because it was amazing. We caught it, we had it hooked up at night, it broke the line in the hole. When do crappies break line? And it wasn't like 8 or 10 pound test or even less than that. It was 12 pound. It was like 12 pound fluorocarbon.
Yeah, typically on our tip ups, you have Dacron or some type of braided line on there, but then we go to a barrel swivel and then you want to run a leader off of that. Typically, we're using 12 pound test. Unless we know we're around a lot of toothy critters, like if we're on a lake where we know there's a lot of pickerel, then a lot of times we'll go up to 15 just to cut down on the cutoffs. And if you're going to target the toothy critters, if you're targeting northerns or targeting muskies, then there are different wire leader rigs out there and hooks attached to tieable wire so that you can have a wire leader also so those big ones can't cut you off.
But that crappie did hit a large shiner. And
it ate a large shiner. We see it all the time.
So the crappie that you want to take home, the crappie that you want to show people that you catch, they're hitting shiners. They're not hitting little small baits that you're jigging. You'd
be surprised. A lot of times, the bigger ones especially, they do seem to go for the bigger baits.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid.
Yep.
Use different sizes. If you have 4 tip-ups in the water and a jigging rod in your hand, experiment. Have 2 big baits on, and then like 2 small ones, or 2 big baits and then a medium and a small one, and just see. You'll figure out pretty quick. First couple times out, you'll figure out. Sometimes you get a hot hole. You'll keep continuously getting bit on one tip up or on one rod. It could be the hole or it could be the bait, and then you want to just go from there and get it dialed in.
Yep. Now hooks. We didn't get to talk about hooks on the tip up.
Okay.
So just clock that. Me personally, I like to use wide gap finesse hooks.
It's like similar to like a wacky rig Senko hooks. A short shank.
Short shank.
You want to make sure you have enough gap with those shiners. That's the main thing.
It's a short shank. You kind of see about the thickness of my thumb.
We can get you a close up of it at the end.
Yeah. So I can show a video. I can show the picture of what one looks like right here. But I like those because they fit perfectly through the eye of the shiner. They're not big and gigantic, so they're not noticeable. They're sharp I like using gamakatsus for this, and they generally don't swallow them. You know, when you're trying live bait, you don't want the fish swallowing it. With the
if you're catch and release,
right?
Yeah.
And the wide gap finesse, generally most of the time they're not swallowing them. Now some guys like to use treble hooks, obviously, because there's a better hookup ratio with the treble hooks. But you get a 3-hook treble hook stuck deep.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, the fish is
good.
Fish is gonna die. I mean, if you're keeping them, then it doesn't really matter. If you're out there fishing and you want to keep the majority of what you catch, the treble hook's probably the way to go, especially on the tip ups. To get fish in. But we're mainly catch and release, so we like the single hook. Mm-hmm. So as Steve said, he likes the finesse wide gap. I like the Kale style hook. They're also called a shiner hook. It's just a slightly longer shank, but anything you choose, there's several different types of hook that I think, in my opinion, are good, but you definitely want something that has a little bit of gap to it.
Yep, in order to get that shiner through, that doesn't back around and get into the bait. Cause that's
you don't want that hook point going into the bait and then you can't get the fish hooked.
It's almost instant death.
Yeah.
Like I mean, it's basically if your bait can be swimming around, but if that hook goes back into that bait, every time you try and pull it out, it's done. It's dead.
Agreed.
You can basically just rebait it because it's not going to work. It's not going to do anything for you.
And you definitely want your baits to be lively. We found out so many times you walk over and you check one of your holes, and the bait's dead or not very lively, and you replace it with a very lively bait. A lot of times we'll walk away from it, boom, and there's a bite. Or less than 5 minutes later, then the flag goes up.
Yep, it's almost like the fish is sitting there like poking the bait with like,
looking at
do
it.
something.
Yeah.
Do something, and they're not doing anything. So I mean, I think as far as everything goes, I mean, I know we keep adding like one or two other things. I cannot think of anything else that as far as any other tips or things that we can use.
Yeah, it's like anything else. You want to just get started.
Yes.
At least that's what we want to do. We want to just get started, just dip your toe in, get into it, without putting any more money into it than you have to. Fishing, it's like anything else. You can spend as much or as little as you want. But we think if you get 5 cheap tip-ups, like I said, the cheapest tip-ups are in that $7 to $10 range each. The really good top-of-the-line tip-ups, in my opinion, at least what we see around here, are like $30 to $40 each. But if you go the cheap route like I did with like the dog bones or the polars, Keith had those plastic polar tip-ups. They're cheaper as well, $7 to $10 a piece. You get 4 of those, and then you spend $30 to $40 on a rod and reel combo. You can be into it for about $100 there, $100 on a hand auger, and a little bit of tackle. You can be off and running ice fishing for bare bones basics. You can get into it for about $250 to $300.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the expenses that we kind of get pushed over and we think about what we just talked about is the sled. The sled is a good expense. But the nice part about a sled is there's plenty of people out there who have kids. There's plenty of people out there who have little brothers and sisters that might actually have a plastic sled sitting in their shed or garage.
We started using your old sleds when we started.
Yeah, I had my old kid sled. So it worked well enough, until we could have the money for a sled.
We accumulate stuff here and there. Like every year I bought an ice tender. They're like $22 a piece, I think. Now I have 3 of them. So you get started, and then we slowly accumulated each year. You figure out something that you do like, something that you prefer, one way over another, and then then you slowly just accumulate.
Yeah. So again, we're going to say about 300. It could be less, could be a little bit more, depending what you buy.
Yeah, if you can find a nice used auger.
Yes.
Yeah, it depends.
I'm talking, so auger, hand auger is going to be, 8-inch hand auger, probably about $80, maybe $100 at most.
I think I saw them at Cabela's. The Strike Master 8-inch was $99.99.
Yeah. It depends on what what sales are going on or whatever is going on. I mean, I bought mine a few years ago, so they might have went up in price. But about $100 for a hand auger. Smaller ones will be cheaper.
Yep.
So if you that's the advantage of the 6 inches or the 4 inches.
You could probably get a cheap 4-inch or a 6-inch cut for $50-$60.
Right. So that's the advantage of the 6-inch. So you're talking maybe depending on what you get there.
Right.
Then you're talking about a bucket. Buckets are going to be about $20.
For a good bait bucket, you want to get an aerator too for
Yes.
your bait bucket, so you can keep that bait alive.
So aerator with bucket, $35-$40. Sometimes you can get buckets with aerators built in too, so you don't have to buy both.
Yep.
So right there, so 140 right there. Then you need a scoop. Scoop's going to cost $10 to $20. Depending what you get. Simple metal one should suffice, so don't spend too much on it. So there's 60. So then we're talking tip-ups. Tip-ups, if you get about $10 ones, you get 5 of them, there's 50. So then you're at basically $200 right there.
Yep.
Right? Then along with that, tackle. Now we get premium hooks, so we just do spend a little bit more on hooks and a couple of jigs here and there. Tackle, $40-$50 with line, hooks, sinkers, swivels,
basic terminal tackle.
Basic terminal tackles, $40-$50, enough to get you to enough. Now, a tackle mentioning thing you can do to save some money is using leftover line from bass season. That's something I always do because I always have like that 100 yards or 50 yards of fluorocarbon left over from the one reel I just spooled at the end of the year. You can use that on your tip-ups, and then there you go. You don't have to spend any for leader material for your tip-ups.
I do the same thing. In the beginning of the year, I buy my monofilm in 1,000-yard spools. Stren, just cheap, low-vis green, nothing special. I usually have 100 yards, 150 yards or so left over after the season, so I'll spool my leader material on my tip-ups or on my ice tender rods that have braid on them. I'll run a barrel swivel and then just put a 3-4 foot leader on there of that 12 or 15 pound mono, depending on what we're doing.
Yep. So I mean, conservatively, right there, we just kind of added it all up just off the top of our heads. Again, give or take for a few things.
Just to get started.
250 to 300.
Yep.
Relative.
Modestly.
And again, that's, it depends on what you get.
Yeah, if you want to buy St. Croix rods and top-of-the-line tip-ups and a power auger, obviously, you could dump $500 or $1,000 into this really quick. But bare bones minimum to get started, you're looking for everything, you're looking at like $250, $300.
Yep. And that's what we suggest to start off with, and then go from there and go and replace stuff that you want to upgrade or whatever. Because then the nice part is you can always, the ice fishing's kind of cool, is you can always get an extra guy or two to come along, or a kid, and then guess what? They have stuff to use that's usable, that they can, that they don't have to go out and buy for themselves. Because, I know I have enough devices for 2 people by myself.
Same. Yeah, you definitely want to be maxed out. Like I said, in Pennsylvania, you're allowed 5 lines per person. You definitely want to have 5 lines in the water at all times.
All right, so I think we covered pretty much
that's the basics.
Everything
Ice fishing 101.
Ice fishing 101, how-to guide, what gear guide, whatever you call it here. So we're gonna wrap it up here, and so that's our episode, and we're gonna be going probably next week. Keith will not be joining us because he does have to work, unfortunately.
We're 3 days before Christmas here now. Christmas is today's Sunday. This is Sunday night. Yeah, Christmas is Wednesday. So hopefully this weekend, Saturday or Sunday, we just got reports that we have safe ice up in the Pocono regions and the northeastern parts of Pennsylvania here. They were out Friday. The park rangers were checking the one area we fish, and they had an average of 6 inches of ice depth. Our local lakes here, like Onalawney and Blue Marsh, are just starting to freeze over. They have skin ice on them. They are not safe to fish yet. So we're hoping this coming Saturday or Sunday, right after Christmas here, between Christmas and New Year's, we're hoping to make it up to the Poconos, and hopefully we can get y'all some footage. Yep,
and we did have some footage last year, how to find bass through the ice, so you guys can check out that video. If I also have some action footage from last year at the same lake we're going to called Shahola Marsh Reservoir, one of the best fisheries in Pennsylvania for bass that nobody fishes. Trust me, it's awesome. It's hit or miss or ice season, but on open water, it's tough to beat.
It's on.
Yeah, but it's a really nice fishery. It's known for its big pickerel too. It does have the state record pickerel for Pennsylvania, so there are some 2-foot pickerel in there.
It's a grass lake, a lot of bass, a lot of pickerels. Pretty shallow for the most part.
We haven't come across any crappies, but they are in there. We've caught some big bluegills out of there, and the occasional perch. I don't know what the heck happens, but I will tell you this: sometimes you get these hits on these fish, and they just take off, and the reel just spins and spins and spins like its head's on fire. I don't know how to describe it. Like it's peeling off line faster than you can even think, and it's spraying water everywhere, and you set the hook, and it's like, what the heck?
Nothing there.
Nothing there.
Gotta figure out what the heck that is.
That's what I'm trying to. I'm like the monster of Shohola Marsh Reservoir. I'm thinking it's probably big perch, and they're just not having the whole minnow on that.
Think too.
But yeah, we'll hopefully get some footage up there because it's one of my favorite lakes to fish in Pennsylvania.
Usually no shortage of action.
Yeah.
Which I'm all about.
So so stay tuned for that next weekend, and I guess we're signing off. So.
If you like what you see, please subscribe, like, share, check out our other videos. We'll talk to you soon.
Keep on fishing.